For decades, Hollywood's take on the Viking Age has felt like a recycled costume party. We get the same tired tropes: horned helmets that never existed, acres of modern black biker leather, and neatly choreographed one-on-one sword duels. Directors like Ridley Scott have churned out these stylized, historically dubious epics to the point that audiences practically expect inaccuracy as a baked-in feature of the genre. Then, in 2022, director Robert Eggers released The Northman. Almost immediately, academics, historians, and archaeologists praised it as a radical departure from the norm, frequently calling it the most historically accurate Viking film ever committed to celluloid. The story itself reaches straight back to the roots of Norse literature. If the plot of a young prince avenging his murdered father sounds suspiciously familiar, that is because it originates from the 12th century Saga of Amleth, recorded by the Danish historian Saxo Grammaticus. This is the precise, grimy Scandinavian legend that later inspired William Shakespeare to write Hamlet. But the high praise from academics raises an obvious question. Is this movie actually a flawless one-to-one reflection of the 10th century? Or are there still Hollywood embellishments hiding beneath the mud and blood? Evaluating historical cinema rarely comes down to a simple true or false binary. To understand how The Northman succeeds, we have to audit the film along a spectrum of authenticity, starting with the unvarnished facts it gets perfectly right. Eggers built his baseline of authenticity from the dirt up. He consulted with leading archaeologists, including Neil Price, to ensure the tangible, everyday objects of the Viking world were exact replicas of historical finds. This means the costumes are made from naturally dyed wool rather than synthetic leather. The weapons are authentic, single-edged 10th century blades. And the headgear features meticulously grounded reconstructions of real discoveries, like the famous German Boo helmet, with thankfully 0 horns in sight. That physical realism heavily dictates the combat. Real Viking shield walls bore little resemblance to dynamic Hollywood battlefields. They were grueling, agonizing shoving matches, where men were packed tightly together in the mud, stabbing blindly in a claustrophobic crush. The film is equally uncompromising when it comes to social history. It refuses to shy away from the horrific realities of the Norse economy, openly depicting the massive, brutal human trafficking network that the Vikings ran from the British Isles, all the way to the rivers of Eastern Europe. It also dismantles the popular mythology of grand, towering mead halls. When the characters finally settle in Iceland, their home is a muddy, isolated sheep farming outpost, completely devoid of glamour. By committing to these harsh material and social realities without trying to sanitize them, the filmmakers earn our implicit trust. We believe in the physical world they've built, which gives them the leeway they need when the story moves into more interpretive territory. Moving along the spectrum to interpreted history, we encounter the movie's most visually striking unit, the elite shock troops known as the Berserkir, or Bear Shirts, and their counterparts, the Ulfhavner, or Wolfskins. These elite warriors worshipped Odin and truly believed they could channel the terrifying spirits of wild beasts. Resorting to animalistic howling and naked fury was a documented psychological warfare tactic designed to terrify the enemy before the shield walls locked together. But here is where the film bends reality for visual effect. Showing elite, highly trained soldiers charging into a fortified village, completely devoid of chainmail or padded armor, is a quick way to end up dead, and historically, these men knew better. We also have to discard the persistent myth that these warriors were hallucinating on fly agaric mushrooms. Consuming those before a fight would likely leave a warrior violently vomiting or falling fast asleep, making it virtually impossible to swing a battle axe. Today, the historical consensus points away from chemical enhancement. The frenzy was much more likely a state of self-induced hysteria, brought on by rhythmic chanting, heavy drinking, and a massive surge of ritualistic adrenaline. While the film's literal depiction of completely naked raiders is an exaggeration, it serves a precise narrative purpose. It successfully translates the genuine, paralyzing psychological terror that these shock troops inflicted on their enemies directly to the modern audience. Finally, we reach the far end of the authenticity spectrum, pure cinematic myth. The film's climax features a spectacular, naked sword fight set at the edge of an active, erupting volcano in Iceland. Historically, Norse culture handled disputes through a highly formalized legal duel known as a holmgang. These were civilized, heavily regulated affairs fought on a designated cloak or a small island. Combatants took turns striking, they had a set number of shields they could break, and matches often ended at first blood. If two men had actually attempted to duel at the base of Mount Hekla while it was actively erupting, the toxic sulfur fumes would have choked them to death before they even had a chance to unsheathe their swords. We can apply a similar, microscopic nitpick to the film's spiritual elements. The movie shows a female Valkyrie with horizontal grooves filed into her teeth. While archaeologists have found Viking-era skeletons with these exact dental modifications, every single one of them has been male, suggesting it was an initiation mark strictly for merchant or warrior guilds. Yet historians readily forgive these factual breaches. These represent deliberate aesthetic choices rather than lazy mistakes, designed to elevate the story into a mythological climax fitting for an ancient saga. Ultimately, the erupting volcanoes and minor costume embellishments don't detract from the film's overwhelming praise, because the foundational world-building is airtight. The story fully embraces the fatalistic Norse worldview, known as word, or fate. It presents a society where a person's destiny is entirely pre-written by the Norns, leaving an individual with only one real choice: how bravely they will meet their inevitable end. While replicated pottery and accurate leather straps provide the baseline, the film's real achievement is its ability to pull the audience into the authentic psychology and mindset of the people who actually lived it. The Northman strips away decades of sanitized, romanticized tropes to reveal a 10th century that was dark, uncompromising, and incredibly brutal. And in doing so, it proves that the unvarnished reality of history is inherently more metal and entertaining than any fiction Hollywood could invent.